Hello everyone, and welcome to this biology class. It's my pleasure having you here with me this time. So I'm going to be discussing adaptation for survival with you in this particular class. What is adaptation? Adaptation simply means the process by which the species becomes fitted to its environment, and usually it's a result of natural selection. When we talk about adaptation, it could either be structural adaptation or behavioral adaptation or physiological adaptation. Adaptation, again, simply refers to the process by which an organism or a species becomes adapted or fitted to its environment. Okay, so and it could either be adaptation that is structural, meaning that such a species or such an organism have a physical part, okay, that it uses for its adaptation, or it could be behavioral, the way the organism behave or the way groups of organisms behave. That is structural adaptation, and affecting the way the organism responds to its environment. And the third type is physiological adaptation, which means metabolic adjustment of the organism within the cell, the tissue, or organ of the body of the organism. Those are the three types of adaptations that we have. So I move on to special adaptations shown by organisms for survival. The major purpose of adaptation is for an organism to be able to survive, for an organism to be able to live successfully, or for an organism to be able to be fitted for its environment. Okay, so one of the way by which organisms survive is referred to as adaptive coloration. When you say adaptive coloration, is the possession by an organism of a color which enables it to be able to catch its prey, to be able to catch its prey, or avoid its predator or enemy, or be able to secure mates and ensure their survival. What does that mean? Three things here. What is the purpose of adaptive coloration? Adaptive coloration will help an organism to have a color that resembles that of its environment, so that it will not be easily detected by its prey, or it will be able to avoid its own predator, or it will be able to secure mates and ensure their survival. So those are the purpose of adaptive coloration. We have different type of adaptive coloration. We have the color blending. These are also referred to as cryptic coloration or concealing coloration or hidden coloration. Okay, when you talk about color blending with the environment, you can see the grasshopper here in this picture blending with the color of the what of the environment. An example of is another example is also a green snake under the green grass. Okay, such will be able to blend with the color of the environment in order to number one, um, hide from the what from the predator. Number two, also be difficult to notice by its prey. Okay, so and then for it to be able to have a survivor. Apart from that, you also have counter shading. Counter shading basically means an organism or an animal possessing a dark dorsal surface and a light ventral surface. When you say dorsal, that's the back. Okay, like you can see here, this is the back part of this fish, a dark dorsal surface and a light ventral surface. You can see the light part of this fish here, in order to be able to remain unnoticed by predator both above and below the water. When this fish is inside the water, above the soil, above the water, it will be unnoticed because of the dark dorsal surface, and also below the water, it will be unnoticed by other predator which might want to feed or prey on it. That's below the water. So that's counter shading. Then you also have camouflage. You are familiar with camouflage, and camouflage simply means when a particular organism or species changes its color to match with the color of the environment. That is commonly seen in grasshopper, and in chameleon, in snake, and so on and so forth. You also have disruptive coloration. When you say disruptive coloration, in this case, there are patterns that are breaking in the body of the outline of the animal against the dark and light shades of their background. As you can see in this picture here, you have a tiger which have a pattern on its body that fits directly to its environment. You can also see this the animals here, zebra, or having pattern which resembles that of the what, that of the background, so they will be unnoticed by their predator. And in the case of the tiger, the prey will not easily notice its presence. Then you have warning coloration. In the case of warning coloration, an organism will have a color with which it's able to uh, 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 detect, or with which it's able to avoid its predator. In this case, they have what you call unpleasant feature. So in this case, they're able to announce the presence of the organism to potential predator, so that predator can be able to avoid them. When predators see such organism, they avoid them. Example is variegated grasshopper. You also have black and yellow band wasps. Okay, so those are the example of organism that uses warning coloration. Okay, so the next one I'm talking about here is the mating coloration. When we talk about mating coloration, this is found in agama lizard. Look at the head of the agama lizard. It has a brightly colored head, by which when it move its head, it use the head to attract the female. And then you also have the peacock. The peacock with its brightly colored tail will also be able to attract mate. Okay, so you also have mimicry. In the case of mimicry, you have an harmless organisms that resembles a distasteful or a harmful one for the enemies to avoid. A very good example is stick insect. You can see here, this is stick insect. It almost look as if it's not an insect. Okay, look at it. This is a stick insect, and it's on top of a stick. Okay, so it's resembling something that it is tasteful, something that is harmful, something that is not palatable. So the predator will just avoid it, and by that is able to survive in its habitat. You also have a swallowtail, and the swallowtail here also have that's a butterfly, also having a structure that make it to be harmful to its potential predator. Okay, now let's talk about structural adaptation for obtaining food. When we talk about structural adaptation for obtaining food, in this case referring to the beak of birds. You have different kind of birds that have different type of beaks. Okay, depending on their what, depending on their feed or what they feed on. Number one, you have a kind of beak that is adapted for feeding on flesh, tearing flesh, killing and tearing off flesh. And a very good example is eagle. This is an eagle. Look at the mouth part of the eagle. You also have falcon. Look at the mouth part. Look at this hawk. They all have similar mouth parts, which is adapted to use to kill and feed on flesh. Okay, look at this also. You also have heron bird. It possesses a long, strong, and pointed beak, which is used for picking fish in the water. Look at the beak, and then look at the beak over here in action, trying to pick up a fish in water. Then you have hummingbirds. Hummingbirds, they possess a long and a tubular tipped tongue. What is it used for? It is used for what? Sucking nectar from flowers, sucking nectar from a flower. You have weaver birds. Weaver birds possesses short, cone, sharp beak for what? For picking up seeds. for picking up seeds. Okay. Next, you have a woodpecker. A woodpecker possess long, narrow, and pointed beak, and it's used for picking insects on the back of the tree. This is the back of the tree here, and you can see the beak trying to pick up insects on the back of the tree. Then, apart from the beak of those birds, we also have adaptive feature on their feet. You have different type of foots of the birds, which also assist them in surviving in their habitat. Okay, so you have the climbing feet. You have the climbing feet, and that's feet like these help birds like the woodpecker to climb the trees, and then you also have the swimming feet, and those are webbed feet that help birds like duck to paddle through water. You have the running feet. In this case, this is peculiar because there are only three toes. There are only three digits. Okay, so in this case, it's using those three toes or digits, they face forward, which it helps to run. We call it running feet. And then you have the patching feet. The patching feet has four toes, and one of which is in the back. Okay, in this case, they are used for patching on the trees, or patching on branches of trees, or patching on rocks and so on. Okay, then you have the grasping. The grasping is used by such organisms as we discussed earlier, like eagle, like hawk, those that feed on flesh. So they are able to use their grasping feet to pin down their prey, and in order to be able to use their beak to tear off the flesh. So you have this crashing. You have this crashing. This is used by chicken and other birds that are scratchers. Okay, they scratch the dirt for their food, like grains and insects, and so on and so forth. Okay, so let's move on to talk about the mouth part of some insects. Talking about mouth part of insects, you have the one we call the sucking mouth part. The sucking mouth part is found in housefly. The housefly feeds on liquefied food. How does that happen? The housefly has an enzyme in its saliva, which it will secrete on a solid food that will liquefy the food, and eventually able to use its structure in its mouth part to be able to suck, or to be able to take in the food, and the structure is called labella. So the labella has fine channels for rapid absorption. Okay, so like I said, it will first pour its saliva on the food to liquefy it, and then it also has a labium that will help to rush the liquefied food into its proboscis, because that is for housefly. You also have piercing and sucking mouth part. Take note of the difference between sucking mouth part, then piercing and sucking mouth part. In the case of piercing, sucking mouth part, no need of piercing. Okay, but in the case of piercing and sucking mouth part, they will first pierce into the structure, maybe like the organism in the case of mosquito, or pierce into the flower like in the case of a butterfly, before they suck. Okay, so in the case of mosquito, they possess a stylet. The stylet usually will pierce into the skin, and the stylet is made up of a pair of mandible and maxilla, as you can see. Okay, on both side of the proboscis. Before the proboscis will eventually be able to suck into the will pierce into the skin, and then be able to suck out the liquid or the blood from the organism. So the stylet first will pierce into the skin, and then the proboscis will help to take the blood, and that's how they carry out piercing and sucking. Then you also have the butterfly. This is a butterfly. They have a long coiled proboscis. When the proboscis is not in use, it is usually coiled under their head, and then when it's ready to use it, it uncoil it, and then pierce into the flower to suck the nectar of the flower. Those are the different type of mouth parts that we have. Okay, we also have biting and chewing mouth parts, which is found in cockroach and grasshopper. These are biting and chewing insects. This type of insects are able to bite and then able to chew, and this is owing to the type of mouth part which they possess. They have what you call the labrum. What's the function of the labrum? The labrum is an upper lip that prevent food from falling off. Okay, they also have the labium. The labium is over here, and that is a lower lip which present wastage of food. And then they have the mandible and the maxilla. Okay, the first is the mandible, which is a jaw-like structure for cutting and chewing food. For cutting and chewing food, you have the mandible, and then you have the maxilla, which help to break down food into smaller um, pieces. Okay, you have the maxilla, you have the mandible. So those are the structure that bring about biting and chewing in this particular type of insect. Okay, so you have others that we can still talk about. The grinding mechanism found in cattle, sheep, and goats. Okay, and that is owing to the type of teeth that they also have. They have strong teeth like canine, like incisor, like premolar, and like molar. But note that herbivores, they don't have canine, and that's because they do not feed on flesh. They only feed on grass, and the major function of the canine is to help in tearing flesh. Okay, so let's look at adaptation, social adaptation for protection and defense. You have some animals, they are exoskeleton, they have exoskeleton with which they protect themselves. You have some with horns. Those with horns like cow, they use their horns for self-defense. You have those that can bite like dog, like snake, like termite. All these ones also defend themselves with their biting. Then you have those that swim like the flying bird, also flying bird or insects that help them to also be able to defend themselves or protect themselves. Then we have social adaptation for regulating body temperature. Some organisms possess feathers, some scale, and some shell. All these are structural adaptation for organisms to be able to protect themselves from excess temperature. Okay, from both extreme temperature, either too hot or too cold. Okay, so now you also have the termite. When you talk about the termites, basically these are organisms that have a kind of we call them social organism. We call them social organism. Why do we call them social organism? Because they are highly organized set of organisms. They live in a highly organized group. They usually live underground in tunnels. That's termites in particular, and they feed on cellulose, and that's thereby they are able to help to damage woody materials. That's the economic importance. They damage woody materials, and they also damage young crops. And with this, they are able to help to maintain fertility of the soil by breaking down dead materials into humus. Okay, so now we have different types of castes. They have different type of castes. You have the queen and the queen and the king. You have the workers. You have the soldiers. This is a king and this is a queen. So what's the function of a king and a queen? They are the one that we refer to as reproductive members of the caste. They are referred to as what? Reproductive members of the caste, with the responsibility of mating and laying eggs. Those are their two functions. They mate and they lay eggs, and that's all they do in the caste. So there is always only one king and one queen at any given time, at any particular time. Although you could have other fertile potential kings and queen, but at a given time there's only one king and queen. Okay, then they have the workers. The workers, these are sterile females with no eyes. When you say sterile, that means they are non-reproductive. They are soft and have a pale exoskeleton. They have well-developed mouth parts. Well-developed mouth parts for the purpose of what? The purpose of working. Workers are responsible for building the termitarium, searching for food and bringing in food for other members in the colony. Apart from that, they also uh, help to collect eggs and care for the limbs. Okay, so and then you also have those that we refer to as soldiers. The soldiers are also sterile, they are blind, they are wingless, but these ones they are males. Okay, they have a big head, a large head. You can see that their own head is big. Okay, they also have thick exoskeleton and huge mandibles. Okay, their major role is to protect the colony from invaders and also protect the workers as they gather food for for the colony. So that is about the cast of the termite, their social insects. So these are their own type of adaptation is what we refer to as structure behavioral adaptation. Okay, so then you also have cast of bees. When talk about bees, they live in a hive. Okay, so it's usually composed of a single coin and a few hundred of droves, and then they have several thousand of workers. Okay, so there I can see this is the queen, the biggest. This is a worker, and this is a drone. Now, talking about each of them, you have the drones. They are usually hatched from unfertilized eggs. These drones are hatched from unfertilized eggs. That's number one. Apart from that, they are also responsible for fertilization. What does that mean? The drone is a fertile male in the beef hive, and the main function of drone is to mate with the queen bee. That's their function, to just mate with the queen bee, and then after they've mate with the queen bee, they die. They die with the queen bee as the male reproductive part of uh, these drones will explode within the queen's female reproductive organ, and that's how they die. Okay, so now we also have those one we refer to as the queens, and basically basically you have the queens and the workers. They are hatched from fertilized egg, unlike drones that are hatched from unfertilized egg. Okay, and if the larva that is formed from the egg feed on pollen grains and honey, they become workers. But if they're able to feed on royal jelly, which has vitamin, then they develop into a queen. So the queen then will secrete a queen substance that suppress the development of ovaries in the workers. So the major responsibility of the queen is to reproduce in order to replenish the caste, while the worker basically provide food for the colony. Okay, so now I'm going to take you through few questions that you can look at in order to prepare for your exam. Objective questions. These are likely examination questions. Okay, from what we've studied, which of the following beaks is correctly linked with the type of food adapted to? Okay, so I'm not going to spend much time here so that this video will not be too long. So the answer is B. Okay, this is a long pointed beak that is fitted for fishing. You can see that this is not, okay, this is not, and likewise this is not. Okay, look at this. Which of the following does not illustrate adaptation to the environment? When we talk about adaptation to the environment, is it color changes by chameleon? Is it streamline shape of fishes, light bones in birds, development of big muscle by a weight lifter, or possession of things by fish? Which of the following does not illustrate adaptation? That is development of big muscle by a weight lifter. Okay, the changing of color by chameleon to that of the environment is an example of a adaptive radiation, protective coloration, courtship display of body color, or territorial behavior. So the answer is what? Protective coloration. Next is the division of labor in social insects. It's an example of what? Well, that's what I've just talked about. It's an example of behavioral adaptation. Behavioral. It's not structural. It's not physiological. It's not commercialism, and it's not hormone. Okay, so the answer is behavioral adaptation. Okay, so one of the structural adaptations of mammals for movement on land is the development of pentadactyl limb. Pentadactyl is not hollow bones, it's not fused thoracic bones, it's not. What is pentadactyl limb? Pentadactyl limb refers to the five digits on the limb, either on the toe or on the fingers. Okay, the five digits that help in movement for mammals. Okay, and that's what you refer to as pentadactyl limb. Then you also have which of the following is not characteristics of social insects? All members are identical, correct. There is division of labor, that's correct. And the members dwell in the same habitat, is that correct? Okay, some members protect the coin. Is that correct? To say which of the following is not characteristics of social insects? All members are identical. All of them are not identical. The coin is different from the king, and the king is different from the worker. They have some structural adaptation that make it to differentiate each of them depending on what they do in the cast. So all members are identical is the answer. Okay, so the gradual, cumulative, adaptive, and heritable changes in an organism over a long period of time, resulting in species, resulting in new species, is not adaptation, it's not survival. So the answer is organic evolution. You can check other videos that I have. The organic evolution is basically gradual, cumulative, and adaptive and heritable changes that take place to an organism over a long period of time. That's evolution. Then look at this structure. This is under variation. The type of variation illustrated above is what? Is not continuous, it doesn't change. Like I said in my previous video, I cannot roll the tongue and I can still roll the tongue today. Then is it discontinuous variation? Yes, that's the answer. It's not morphological because morphological is the same thing as continuous. Then it's also not environmental variation. So special modification which enable an organism to survive in its habitat is known as what? What is special modification which enable an organism to, of course, the answer is adaptation. Okay, and then a noticeable physical appearance of individuals of the same species is referred to as what? A noticeable physical appearance. That is morphological variation. Okay, and okay, so that's the last question. We have several other questions. You can go through your first question and check out questions on this topic of adaptation, and you will see that it's just as easy as ABC. Thank you for joining me.